Welcome everyone to this short clip regarding safety at sea. Today we are going to be looking at a couple of things. One of them, what actually causes an incident, how bad they are, the underlying reasons, as well as what an incident actually is. And why do we do that? Because every accident is a notice that something is wrong with men, methods, or material. Investigate, then act. Because if something happens, and you don't act on it, you don't find out what went wrong or why it went wrong, it is bound to happen again. And normally you'll already say that accidents shouldn't happen, but they definitely shouldn't happen twice. Or even more than that. So, today we are going to look 1 at what incidents are, 2 at how bad those incidents are, 3 when or why those incidents occur, and 4, a little something called latent failures, also known as the underlying reasons why things happen, even more than the why incidents occur. So, what are incidents? Well, an incident is effectively when something happens, when something goes wrong. And that something can be something that's very small. For example, you're standing on the bridge and you accidentally bump into your co-worker who hits the throttle since the engine is on remote control, and you use too much fuel, and that could already be an incident. So something very small. Or somebody drops a tool, it lands on somebody's foot, that person isn't wearing his safety shoes and they bruise their foot, for example. It could also be something very big, like you might think the Costa Concordia, or Deepwater Horizon, the Maersk Alabama. So something very big to very small. And all of them are incidents. Some of them might also be accidents, because they just accidentally happened. Nobody meant for it to go wrong. Whereas others are pure incidents where somebody purposefully did something wrong. Now, let's take a look at how bad incidents are. When it comes to severity, severity is a word to describe how bad something is. We look at, or we're talking about 4 major categories in how bad it is. The worst one is catastrophic. Just one step below that, you're speaking about major damages. The third one is called moderate, so a sort of intermediate thing. And the last one is called minor. There's barely any damage, nothing really bad going on, but there's still some damage, something happened. So, we have those 4 scales, so to say, 4 levels of severity, describing how bad it is. We also have 4 categories that we look at in terms of where the damages occur. The first category we look at is damage to the vessel. So damage to the ship itself. The second category we look at is the cargo, so damage to whatever it is carrying. This could also be people, like for example with cruise vessels or rodos that transport people, ferries. The third one is the crew. So we're specifically talking about the crew, and in certain cases you might think, hey, other people might belong to this category. No, we're talking about cruise ships there. Cargo. And finally, the environment, sometimes overlooked, but that doesn't mean that it is less important. And when looking at these categories, we notice a couple of key words, small descriptions. For example, when we look in the catastrophic level, and we look at vessel and cargo, we see that we talk about total loss. It's important to know what total loss actually means. Total loss means that if you need to repair the damages, you are going to pay worth more. You are going to pay more than what it is worth in the end. So, for example, let's say, and this is simplified, you incur damages equal to $1,000 or 1,000 euros, and afterwards your cargo would only be worth 800 euros. You wouldn't repair that because that does not make sense financially. So you're speaking about the total loss. Now, when we're looking at crew, we see loss of lives, also known as casualties in the SMCP. When even one single person loses their life, we are speaking about a catastrophic event. And when we are looking at the environment, we are talking about widespread, so it's not just a small area, but it's a larger area, and severe damage. Severe means that the damage is quite bad. It's really pretty bad. So when we notice the words total loss, if we see that, we already know we're speaking about a catastrophic event. The next category, major, we see a keyword that comes back in almost every step. We see the word severe. Severe and severe. Severe means that the damage is actually really bad. So let's go with the €1,000 analogy. Let's say to the vessel, you do indeed have a total cargo worth €1,500, and you have to pay 1,000 to repair it. So you only make a profit of 500. So the damage is quite severe. That's a large portion of money that you're losing. When we look at the crew, we see that it's seriously injured, and that people actually require a hospital. Normally, you can sometimes fix things on board of your vessel. You have a doctor on board or somebody with a medical certificate, and they can look at it and fix it. But if somebody has to go to the hospital, so transported off ship, we're speaking about a major accident or major incident. The keyword in the category major would be severe. When we are looking at the category moderate, we see the keyword significant. It comes back. Looking at environment, we see significant local damage. So there is damage, and it is significant, so that means that there's definitely some damage, but it is localized, so it's not widespread. Let's say that you have an oil spill in the port of Rotterdam, but we can contain it to, for example, just the Sint-Jobskade. That would be local. But we have a lot of oil in the water, and then you might describe it as local. We see the significant damage to cargo and your vessel, so that means you will need some repairs, but you can still sail on. It shouldn't inhibit you too much, but there are some issues. And for the crew, we see the injuries. We see that it requires medical attention. Let's say somebody dislocates their shoulder. That could be something that requires medical attention, but it can still be fixed on board. Looking at the final category, we see minor, and we see the keyword minor damage, minor injuries, and hardly any damage. Hardly any means that there is almost no damage. So there is a little bit, but almost no. Minor damage to a vessel might be that you have some paint that came off, or to the cargo you might have some dents in some containers. The minor injuries, you have some scrapes and some bruises. For example, the tool from the earlier slide. The tool that fell on the foot. All of those are minor. So, for instance, we look at where does the damage occur and how bad is it. And then when looking at that, we base it on the worst category. So, for example, we run our vessel aground. There's barely any damage to the vessel, like a little bit of paint that fell off. But because somebody was standing on some sort of small ladder, he fell off, he hit his head, and he died. We might say, hey, well, the vessel only has minor damage, but somebody lost their life. So we are scaling that as catastrophic. We look at the worst. Now, why do incidents occur? Effectively, when something happens, we can blame it or, sort of define it by 3 types of factors. The first one is the internal factor. That means that something went wrong with, for example, the ship's dimension and draft, the rudder, propulsion, and the navigational system. So something on board the vessel went wrong. You had a sudden engine failure, and that caused you to go adrift, delay in time, and your cargo of bananas all went bad, for example. That could be an internal factor. Then we also have our external factors from the outside, like the weather conditions, the current tides, unforeseen circumstances, and a special addition to that is piracy. Why is piracy so special? You might think, hey, that's humans, but they come from the outside and you can't control them. That's why pirates are classified as an external factor. And then finally, human factors. Human factors means that somebody was the reason that this happened. And we divide the human factor into two types of categories as well. We have our active failures. That means that somebody actively did something, the reason why it went wrong at that point, and latent failures, the underlying reasons. Why did it happen, or why could it happen? So for example, somebody, in the earlier described incident, somebody bumped into a co-worker on the bridge, he hit the throttle, we used more fuel. That's a small incident. What's the active failure? Somebody bumped into somebody else, and the other person hit the throttle. So, those are the two active failures that happened. Now, what is the latent failure? The underlying reason. Why did it even occur? And we're going to take a closer look at those, because there are 10 of them. 10 latent failures. The first one is regarding procedures and regulations. And this means that there is something wrong. If there's a latent failure in procedures and regulations, that means that there is something wrong in those two things. That might mean that there are no clear rules and regulations on how to act for the standard tasks. So, make sure that you pass a couple of meters behind someone, if you can. The second one is design and arrangement. Is your vessel actually equipped to do its job properly? You are not going to transport a boatload of bananas with a dry bulk carrier. That would be kind of silly, because those bananas need specialized equipment. Third one is maintenance. Did you perform it properly? And if not, why did it not occur properly? The fourth one is the onboard organization. Who is in charge of what? What does the first mate do? The second mate? The captain? Is there a clear hierarchy? Do you have proper meetings? That's all onboard organization. The fifth one is communication, and communication is very broad. It could be communication with somebody on the outside, or internal communication. Two ships hit each other, they collide. Lack of communication between the two vessels. Or somebody on the bridge gave the wrong commands and didn't understand, or somebody else didn't understand them. The sixth one would be training. Is the person standing at the wheel equipped or trained to do its job? Does he even know the English language, for example? Does he understand what's being said? So you already see a sort of combination between communication and training. 7, error-enforcing conditions. Other things that, these are all things that make your job harder. For example, you might be very tired because you're working 20-hour days, or you are going through a divorce, or you are having girlfriend or boyfriend problems. Those are all error-enforcing conditions because you're not fully there with your mind. You're not focused purely on the job. Number 8 is the incompatible goals. You want something, the shore office wants something. Do they clash? The shore office wants you to do your job as quickly as possible, but you want to keep it a little bit safe and take your time. So you might take a shortcut. 9, defenses. Okay, we had a fire. Why didn't the sprinklers go off? Did we even have any sprinklers? Or if it was a special type of fire, why did we even use sprinklers with water? We should use other types of equipment. Those sort of things. And finally, 10, crew's negligence, which means that the crew knew something was wrong but didn't act on it. And all of those are underlying reasons about why something might go wrong. And it is very important to analyze why it went wrong, so you can then act and make sure it doesn't happen again. If you have any further questions, you know who to contact. Contact your teacher, contact me. And I hope you enjoyed this short clip.